Have you ever had a gut feeling about something, ignored it, and then ended up paying dearly for it? I've hosted over 100,000 guests and I've made some massive mistakes, costing thousands in lost profit and hours of wasted time. So in this video, I'm going to show you my absolute worst and real Airbnb blunders, exactly how you can avoid them, and the easiest methods to boost your profits overnight. Now my first 3 lessons here are 3 of the worst and weirdest bookings that I've ever accepted, and this first one cost me over £10,000. So it started off as an inquiry for a corporate booking in a property that we were managing for a client. So this was one guy, he said he worked in Citibank and he was coming to stay for months working on some new project that they had. He was paying £90 a night and it was literally month after month. So it was like £2,700 per month. He was there for ages. And at the start, he was paying it out of his own card and whatever. Then about 3 months in, he said, oh, the company wants to change things. They want you to now invoice them and they'll start paying it to you. So that was no bother. It seemed genuine enough. We would send the invoices to him and then the payments would come through. Now what changed after about month 5 is that the payment did not come through. Now, we reached out to him obviously very quickly and said, what's happening here? Where is our money? And he said, oh, it's been sent to finance. There's a new finance person there. Now, you can see where this is going. Days and weeks went by and he was feeding me the same story about it's gone to finance, there's a new finance director or whatever in place, they need to bring it up to the next person ahead of them, all this sort of stuff. Excuses started coming, but it all did seem plausible. He had a genuine story about working in Citibank. He had paid thousands of pounds already for his stay and it was upfront. I felt like in order to keep the booking and to keep all that rest of the revenue, we need to give him a little bit of leeway. But after month 1, understandably, the client who is due to get that money was saying, where's my money? So we then had to ramp it up and start chasing a bit harder and harder. And I think to try and appease me, he was trying to get on our side and he said, look, I'm really sorry about this. It's finance. There's nothing I can do, but here, I'll pay you some of it and then I'll expense it back to the company. I thought, what a nice thing to do. What a nice guy. That's fair enough. Thank you. So we did that. But then another month went by and it still wasn't happening. And by that stage, I just lost all patience. I went down and sort of burst into the flat, expecting him to be at work and just to see what the hell was going on. It is the strangest story ever. There was like loads of brochures on the table, like he was buying a property here. He was from Northern Ireland. He said he lived in Antrim, but he was nowhere to be seen. But I just waited. And in the meantime, actually, we had a wee look around. We found some interesting things in his cupboard, which I don't think I can say on this video, but they were of I'm not even gonna say. It's too much, too weird. Eventually he came back, surprised like a rabbit in the headlights. We grilled him. Who is the person in finance? Give me their email address. I need to speak to them. Give me their phone number. It all started to unravel. And even though there was a laptop on the table, he said, oh, this isn't my work laptop, this is my personal laptop. None of the information that you need is on this laptop. If you let me just go to Citibank, I'll go and get the work laptop. We'll sort all this out right now. So I thought, okay, fair enough. As security, he left me his passport, his actual real passport. When he left, I changed the locks. All the stuff was still in it. And I said to him, look, I'm changing these locks. When you come back, if you want all of your stuff, you got to phone me with that laptop, with payment of all that money that you owe. And then we can just leave. You can leave, go stay somewhere else, but I need that money. And you know what? I never heard from him again. I still have his passport. All his clothes were left there. The locks were changed. Everything was there. I went to Citibank to try and find him. No one at Citibank had ever heard of him. He did not exist. The whole thing was like a figment of his imagination, a scam, weird. But I didn't want to take this lying down. But I was determined to find him. I knew he was from Northern Ireland. I knew I had his passport. I knew he couldn't get away anywhere. So I went to the small claims court. I raised a file or whatever you call it to like go after him. They sided with us, of course. All the documentation was there. But the problem was they had no address to send any of the stuff to. The address that he had given me as where he lived turned out to be his dead mother's house, which was sold, or in the process of being sold. So he was like a ghost. He did not exist. But again, I was determined. I went looking online for like private detective sort of thing, like how do you find people? And I found this company and I paid them a couple of £100, I think, and they did find him. They tracked him down to like a men's hostel in Belfast. And again, I sent small claims court judgment against him, which was effectively like, I'm taking all your stuff, pay us. But by that stage, he had moved on. And the whole process cost over 10 grand. Now, what did I learn from this? Well, I mean, this is the strangest story I've ever had. And I don't know if you've heard of anything stranger than this. The client who owned the property, who was out the money, was adamant to me, what the hell were you doing taking the money in arrears? Why on earth did you not chase him from the day he didn't pay the first one? And all I could say was, it was genuine, or it seemed to be genuine. He paid up front at the start. He had a very viable story. And then his excuses of why the payment things had to change were also very plausible. You can't just go and like start kicking people out. In hindsight, maybe now I probably would, but back then, everything seemed plausible. It was a big money booking, but so strange. Honestly, leave me a comment if you've had anything like that, or you can even beat it. Now, that terrible guest is very strange, and it's unlikely that that is going to happen to you. This next one is the boogie monster that we all worry about. One Friday in my first probably 6 months of hosting, I met a guest who was arriving to my property to stay for the weekend. He arrived by himself. It was a booking for 4 people. It was a decent amount of money, but the address was Belfast. So he lived in Belfast and he was booking an apartment in Belfast. Now, red flags, alarm bells going off. Then I was suspicious, but potentially willing to accept the booking. Now, he arrived. I talked about this in other videos and podcasts I've done. He arrived, he had F-U-C-K tattooed on this hand and H-A-T-E on this hand. Instant red flags. But after speaking to the guy, he was a very well-mannered, reasonable, sort of chilled out, normal guy. Of course, I said to him, why do you need an apartment in Belfast if you live in Belfast? And he said, look, me and my friends, we all went to uni, we all went to college together, we've all gone our separate ways, we're all doing other stuff, we rarely see each other, we just want to meet up, we can't go to anyone's house. Yes, we are going to go out, but it's just going to be chilled, we're just going to go out for dinner, have a few drinks, and then come back. It's going to be chilled, we're just catching up. I thought, you look dodgy, but you sound genuine. You sound like reasonable, and it's fine. So I said, look, you're in charge of this group. No one else other than the 4 people on this booking can come into this property. Oh yeah, of course, no problem. I said, I've got your card, your credit card. I've got £250 security deposit. It's all on you to police the other people on this property to make sure that this doesn't get out of hand. Oh yeah, of course. I was like, I know what it's like whenever you go out. You meet people that you've bumped into, you haven't seen in a while. You say, oh, you want to come back? That can't happen. He was like, honestly, Dave, I promise you, it's just us friends. We're just going out, have something to eat, and we're going to come back. You've nothing to worry about. So it turned out I had everything to worry about. So at 3 a.m, I got a phone call from the guests who were staying in an apartment underneath, who I'd also met that day, and told them, if you have any problems, just let me know. So at 3 a.m, they let me know. They told me there was a massive party happening upstairs and I needed to come down. When I arrived at the property, there was cars parked all down the street. You could hear the music blasting, the bass pounding from my apartment. My apartment is up some external steps. Glass was just broken up all of the steps. It was just, it was crazy. So I started banging the door. For a start, no one even answered the door because the music was so loud they couldn't hear me. Eventually someone did, turned the music down and said, who is it? I said, it's me, the f***ing owner. Opened the door and they were like, oh, hang on. I couldn't find the key. Eventually they opened the door. I said, everyone out. Get out now. I went back to the car. Like the person who opened the door was off his head on drugs. Like he was gone. His eyes were like dinner plates. I went back, stood at the car. People started to leave. They got in their cars and drove off. Like 3 a.m. They were on all sorts. Crazy. The guy who booked it came down. I said to him, mate, what the like, you promised me. I know, it just got out of hand. That's the learning right there. It just got out of hand. So he said, look, there's one guy left. I'm gonna go get him and we're gonna go. So he went up, tried to get this other guy. This other guy was not for leaving. I don't know what stuff he was on, but it was far worse than what everyone else was on. The guy who made the booking and this other guy ended up having a full-scale fisticuff fight because he was trying to get him to leave and he wouldn't leave. This guy then came back down. He said, look, I'm sorry, I can't get him to leave. I said, don't worry, I've already phoned the police. They're on their way. My guy who made the booking was like, what? Right, he just vanished. He just disappeared. The police arrived. This guy was sitting up in my apartment, shirt off. He had punched holes in all of our internal wooden doors. There was blood all over them. He was covered in blood. He was bare chested. He sort of resisted the police whenever they came. They ended up arresting him. Turned out he had like money warrants out for his arrest already. Just the worst sort of people. And just people that you do not want in your property. When I came back the next day to clean up, the place was an absolute tip. It was a complete bomb site. All the glass up down the stairs, glass smashed inside. The wooden floor just needed mopped and mopped and mopped again. It was absolutely horrendous. It cost me money in additional cleaning. It cost me money in replacing all the stuff that got broke. It cost me reputational damage with not only my neighbours but my poor cleaners, even though I ended up doing most of the work because I was so embarrassed for it. But I also learned that in instances like that, you need to trust your gut. You have a spidey sense. And even then, in my first 6 months of hosting, it was there and it was ringing and I just didn't trust it. But it's now thanks to this guy that I have like watertight house rules and also a foolproof vetting procedure, which you can get in the link below. And the fact is that this guy is just one of millions of other people, guys and girls of different ages, that choose properties like ours to just have their catch up in, and things will almost always get out of hand. So you need to trust your gut, be strict, be streetwise, and just say no. This is your property. It doesn't matter if the booking is in and it's confirmed and they paid. It's your property. You get to decide who comes in. Now this next guest is another very strange one. It's actually making me uncomfortable even thinking about it, and I need to be again careful about what I say because I don't want this video to get flagged or for me to get cancelled. And this booking happened in my second property, and it was a booking for a Jonathan Martinez from Mexico. Anyway, due to arrive, at that point I was still doing meet and greets. I got the message, I'm downstairs. So I went to the front of the building. I could not see a Jonathan anywhere. I could see a very attractive, heavily make-upped and also plastic woman standing there who looked at me and I looked at her and I said, Jonathan? And she said, yes. I think she actually said, see. Anyway, we got to the apartment, and again, by this stage, I was aware of people who were coming to use these flats for nefarious purposes. So I said to her, what do you have planned for Belfast? And she said, nothing. I'm like, what are you going to do? Are you going to do the Giant's Causeway, the Game of Thrones tour, the Troubles tour? No. I was like, so what are you going to do? And she said, well, just be here and just see about. And my sister's coming and my mum's coming, and yeah, we're just going to chill out. And I was like, right, again, the spidey sense. And I was like, we have cameras here. So to make it clear, this is what was happening. In cities around the world, escorts, the other word that begins with P, travel around. They do not stand on street corners anymore. They travel around like jet setters. There's websites that they go on, and they just go on like a world tour. This was Jonathan's latest stop. And I sort of knew, but like, what am I gonna do? Say, you're a prostitute, you're not coming in. So I was trying to imply that I was aware of what may have happened. So I said, Jonathan, it's a very safe building. There's cameras all over the place, and they check and make sure that everyone's coming and going is safe and that there's no bad people coming in. And they said, okay. She said, okay. I said, and we've got really good neighbors. They look out for us and they keep an eye on the property just to make sure everything's all right. Is that all right? And she said, yeah. And I was like, absolutely called my bluff. Now, I just did not have the balls to say to this person, I believe you're an escort and therefore you're not coming in. So I had to just leave. Now, later on that day, I did what you should do if you suspect that the guest is an escort, is you take their number from the booking and put it into Google. What do you find? And I had to delete my history after that because there was some sites that I found. So that was my evidence. I was able then to go back to Jonathan and say, listen, mate, I found what you're up to. It's not happening. Get out. So that happened. And around about the evening, I was like, you need to be gone. By tomorrow morning, it's over. You're out of here. Fine. Decided to leave. That then next morning, my cleaners arrived. And even though she had been in for less than 24 hours, what they found shocked them. So used condoms, I really don't know if I can say this. Used condoms strewn all over the place. The bin overflowing, under the beds, in the toilet, everywhere. Strikingly as well, about a dozen banana skins. Now, I don't know what that is, but there was about a dozen banana skins from one day. There was also a chair. We have a full-length mirror. There was a plastic IKEA chair propped against it with a pillow on it facing the mirror, and the pillow was soaking wet. Now, this is I don't know whether this should be in the video, but what did I learn? Well, for a start, there are warning signs for these types of bookings, just like there are for the party bookings. If it's one or two women, or someone called Jonathan, who are staying for a week or longer, that tends to be the sort of time period that these people travel for. If you see that, and if it's one or two people, find out from them, what are they coming for? If you don't get the answers or the vibe back that you think is enough to settle your spidey sense, Google their phone number, see what comes up, and just tell them, look, I found you, I've caught you, you're not coming in. And since then, we've turned away dozens and dozens and dozens of people like this. Now, it's not for me to say or comment on the moralities of this thing and people's life choices, but they can go and do it somewhere else, not in my apartment. Now, this is almost certainly a problem or a type of guest that will affect only towns and cities, but it's definitely something that just everyone should be aware of. Now, if we can come down from the craziness of those last three guests, these next mistakes aren't problem bookings, but bad decisions made with the right intentions that cost me thousands of pounds and hours of wasted time. And when I first started, I did everything manually. So if a booking came in from booking.com, I had to log into Airbnb, close off those dates so we don't get a double booking. When that booking came in, I had to go into my email draft folders, copy and paste my draft confirmation email, put it into my new email, copy and paste the guest name in, the date in, the price in. It took so much time. All messages and phone calls came to me. When the guest arrived, I was there to meet them. During their stay, any messages came to me. When the guest left, I was the one who went and cleaned the place. Literally everything to do with this business was me and came through me. I didn't even have any systems or automation. And whilst I was absolutely on top of every single thing, like I could tell you every guest that was coming for the next 6 months, I was burning out. I had no time for myself. I couldn't even schedule time because bookings would land in and I would have to cancel the plans that I made because I had to go and clean the place. And also crucially, I had not even considered the value of my own time. So I thought I was saving money, but I was actually just paying for it with my time, which is valuable. And that was back when I had 2 properties, and I very quickly realized that I wasn't getting any more if I had to do all this work. I was stuck, burning out, overworked at 2 properties, but it wasn't even enjoyable. I was making money, but it was at the expense of all my time, and I was stuck with 2 properties and no ability to grow because I just didn't have the capacity. But the key for me was the first day I decided to outsource the cleaning. So that was the biggest time drain. It was the most functional task. It was the easiest thing that you could say, oh, I'll just get someone else to clean it. It's harder to maybe outsource, especially at the start, the other bits and pieces around this business. But cleaning, everyone knows about cleaning. Anyone can really do it. And that unlocked something in me of like, it's who, not how. And the thing that I learned then is my weekends all of a sudden became freed up. Like I could do stuff, you know, by the cost of paying a cleaner was 100% worth it because I got my time back. I could spend it with my wife. I could do the things and actually enjoy having a business and the freedom and being able to spend the money that it gives you. And honestly, that was amazing for about 5 minutes because once I started to systemize and outsource things, it then actually felt that my problems were getting worse. So when I started the outsourcing of the cleaning, I had 2 properties, averaging about 3 cleans in each one per week. And I found this great lady who was a cleaner and she was brilliant. She sometimes drafted her sister in. She was really good. I could trust her. But as things got busier and she was doing regular house cleans, she came to me and said, look, it's just too much. I can't cope with this. It's the demands, the not knowing exactly when it's going to be, weeks in advance. I need to leave. I need to stop. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll go to a proper cleaning company that has lots of workers, who is going to have the staff available, the capacity to take on all my cleans, that's going to be able to do short notice changes and things like that. So I went to this sort of bigger cleaning company. And that was good at the start, but problems arose very quickly. Namely, different people were coming in to clean the property, almost every clean. So no one was getting to know no one was getting to know the ins and outs and the little bits and pieces that are needed. Sometimes no one showed up. And because this agency was so big, they didn't always have someone there to check to make sure that the person they'd scheduled to go somewhere actually went. So there were multiple occasions where I arrived to meet guests, to check them in, and the place hadn't even been cleaned. And that's a disaster. Add to that, because these people in this agency were getting paid rock bottom minimum wage, it's a job in an industry where people are transient, they move from place to place. So multiple times we were having extremely poor standards of cleanliness. The agency would come in and say, we're really sorry, you know, we're training this person, but it would happen again and again and again. And eventually frictions began to grow between me and the agency owner. And one day when we'd grown to 6 properties, they just said to us, do you know what? We're not doing this anymore. That was on a Friday. We had, I think, at least 6 cleans that next day. It was horrendous. So the lesson I learned there was I was so exposed for this massive part of my business to this one company that if the reputation broke down or the relationship broke down, that I was in the shit. And since then, I've never relied on one entity to do all of our cleaning. So now we have multiple individual cleaners that we can, you know, reward and give loads of work to if they're good, and just jettison and get rid of ones who aren't good. Now, in my head, outsourcing the cleaning, I knew was something that I had to do, but I also knew that standards are going to slip. No one ever cleans a property as well as the owner. But I was willing and I had to accept that. But one thing that I was not going to stop, one hill that I was willing to die on, was to continue to do meet and greets of the guests when they arrived. Back then, I was proud to say I meet every guest. It was a badge of honor. It was a way for us to get new clients as well. Say, oh no, we don't do remote check-in, we meet everyone. I knew how powerful it was, and I knew how many 5-star reviews we got because of it. But I also knew that it couldn't be me doing it. We were getting too big. We were growing from 6 to maybe 10 properties then. There were sometimes 6 people all arriving at 1 o'clock on the same day. You can't be in 6 places at once. So I decided, in my wisdom back then, to just pay people to meet and greet the guests. And that's one of the things I started doing way back when I was helping with my mum and dad. So I used to be paid to be the cleaner, but I would also get paid to meet the guests whenever they arrived. So I found a couple of people and I got them actioned on meeting the guests when they arrived. But just like the cleaners, people don't give a shit about your business as much as you do. So we were getting actual complaints and reviews from people, from guests who met these people. We were getting complaints because the person who was due to meet them didn't actually show up. And it was just a logistical nightmare trying to get people last minute. Bookings come in last minute, things change. You know, people are going to arrive at a certain time and then their plans change. They go for lunch or something. They're going to now arrive 4 hours later. You've scheduled that person in and they can't do for it. Disastrous. So what did I learn? Well, first off, unless you're fully trained in customer service and are like dying about these guests to build rapport, they probably don't give a shit about meeting anyone. They just want to get in and start their holiday. Secondly, it's another example of how as a business owner, in order to grow and have a proper business instead of a job, you have to relax the reins, accept that standards will slip because it's the only reasonable way to do things. It is not sustainable for you or I was to be completely on top of absolutely everything. It's just not working. So instead, I just switched to employing someone full-time to help me manage the business. But when that came, and that was bloody terrifying, obviously costs increase. I'm paying for cleaning, I'm paying for a staff member. Costs are going up, but profit and revenue is staying the same. So I decided one thing that we could do is to try and really double down on getting direct bookings. The gold standard of booking, not paying 15% to booking.com. That's all the money in our pocket. And so how do you do that? Well, one of the best ways to do it is to have your own direct booking website. But when you get that, you need to actually have people find it and then make the booking. Now I had our website, but when people searched for apartments in Belfast, we weren't even showing up on the first page. So I decided to start paying for SEO, search engine optimization. And I struck up a deal with a company in Northern Ireland who I paid £600 a month to, and who were going to create content and like keywords and backlinks and all this sort of shit to get us ranking page 1 and the first organic result. And you know what? We got there. But the problem was, number one, so many ads are paid for by booking.com, by Expedia, by Airbnb, that they all show up. Yes, it's paid, but they show up way in advance of us organically. Secondly, booking.com and Airbnb, they literally pay for your keywords. So like my business is called Centre Belfast Apartments. Booking.com will outbid me on anything Google ad spend related to get ranking top. And thirdly, guests like choice. They don't want to go onto one operator's website and see 5 or 10 apartments. They want to go on booking.com or Airbnb and see 100 or 500 different choices. And the third thing I realized was, I'm paying £600 a month, all to save 15% of each booking that we're getting in. Now, yes, we did get some direct bookings, but when I actually did the sums, it was costing me £600 a month to save a few £100 of commissions to booking.com, because the reality is the bookings were coming anyway, and really that SEO was to try and wrestle people away from booking.com to book direct, and the numbers just didn't add up. Now, on to the next mistake. And with that being said, we were still getting inquiries from contractors and corporate bookings coming in, and their budget was low. It was like £30 per person per night, but we were just getting so many of them that I was like, look, we have to try and do something here. We have to get some corporate or contractor specific properties to tailor for these guests, because that budget was never going to stretch to any of our sort of higher end ones. It had to be something different that was tailor made for them. So I took on 2 or 3 properties that I was calling budget, but in reality were just shit. And the plan was we pay very low rent, but we fill them with contractors. We got 2 bedrooms, we put 2 single beds in each, so we were sleeping 4. I'm thinking £30 times 4, that's £120 per night per apartment. The reality was, when those inquiries came in and we sent the photos of the properties, the contractors just said, no, we don't want to stay there. The place looks horrible. So we ended up with big open gaps, wide open calendars that we were hoping to fill with these inquiries, but we weren't. So then we had to get desperate and try and put them out to the leisure market, the tourism market, and people were looking, and some people did book, but they were just like giving us the worst reviews because these places are not fit for tourists or for leisure guests. So what did I learn? Well, if you're offering budget, that does not mean shit. Budget means clean, minimal, no bells and whistles, but still a nice place for people to stay in. Also, if you're going for the corporate and contractor market, you have to be all in there. You cannot have a property where you sell the weekends, but then you get an inquiry for 3 months from a corporate. You can't take the booking because you've been desperate, you've blinked too soon, and you've filled it with little bookings dotted throughout the calendar. Now, next up, I'm sure you can see through the last load of these, I'm always looking for ways to try and optimize and improve the business. But the most effective thing that I could have done was staring me in the face for years, and I just ignored it. And honestly, it literally was costing me thousands of pounds every year for not doing it. And it was only once I actually realized that it genuinely took my business to the next level. So I've been on Airbnb and I'd seen the smart pricing right at the start whenever I looked at it. And when it tells you, this was way back, it tells you like, here's what we think your prices should be. And I remember looking going, that is so cheap. Like, I don't make any money there. Like, why do you want me to put it down so low? And it was obviously because Airbnb wants properties on their site to be the cheapest, so their guests get the best deals, so their guests keep coming back and using Airbnb. They don't care about us. And I thought they were all like that. And then it finally clicked one day that when you look at Price Labs, when you look at Room Price Genie or Beyond Pricing or Wheelhouse, they only exist for us as hosts. They only exist to make us more money. If they didn't make hosts more money, no one would use them and then they would be out of business. So eventually, one day I decided I'm gonna give it a go. I tried Room Price Genie with a few places and it worked really well. Then I saw the power of what was possible. I saw the Price Labs was the best in the market and we switched to them. And honestly, the difference was absolutely astronomical. Our revenue went up by at least 30%. Like, that's tens of thousands of pounds. The software itself was paid for 1,000,000 times over. The time saving involved in not having to go in and manually adjust things every year. Look, are there new competitors in? Is there new, more expensive places in? Is there new, cheaper places in? What events are coming up? All that headache, all that stress, all that time is just taken away. You check this thing, you do check it regularly, but like, it is doing all the hard work for you. And honestly, as much as I'm so happy about the massive increases in revenue that we've experienced since we turned it on, I am actually genuinely gutted and devastated about the thousands and thousands of pounds of revenue that we missed out on just by not using it, just by me being naive, stubborn, just silly. So if you're not using it, get it switched on. All these mistakes seem so obvious to me now. Hopefully they do to you too, and that means that you'll never make them. But it just highlights the fact that you don't know what you don't know. And for that reason, the next video you need to watch is this one, where I give you 20 expert tips, not only of mistakes to avoid, but things to do to successfully blow up your Airbnb business. And I'll see you in the next one.